Welcome to Whistle Talk, your ultimate destination for all things football officiating. Today we have a true gem joining us on the show, Coach Zach Hilbers, the mastermind behind the West Bloomfield Lakers football team. Together we'll delve into the nuances of coaching, officiating, and the electrifying world of high school football in the Detroit, Michigan area. From dissecting rules changes to sharing memorable moments on the field, this episode promises to be a touchdown of insight and excitement. So grab your whistle and get ready to huddle up with Coach Hilbers. That's coming up next on Whistle Talk.
Are you a football fan? Have you ever found yourself wondering what in the world was that ref thinking? Well, Mike D, the referee, is here to help. Join me on Whistle Talk as I talk to professionals on the field and in the booth to help you understand what is going on inside the mind of a football official.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Whistle Talk, where we're going to dive into the world of football officiating and coaching today. Today, I'm thrilled to have with me head coach of West Bloomfield High School out by the Detroit, Michigan area, head coach Zach Hilbers. Coach is going to jump on with us talking about some of his coaching and the officiating that's going on in the Detroit, Michigan area. Coach, thank you again for jumping on with us tonight. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. I keep saying my pleasure. It's just me.
Yeah,
It's a one-man show here.
Yeah.
So, Coach, tell us a little bit about your program you have going on out there in West Bloomfield Lakers.
Yeah, West Bloomfield High School. I guess if you're going to ask someone about our program, I might be one of the best people to talk to. I grew up in the community, went to high school there, played football, and then I started coaching my senior year at Michigan State. Started kind of driving back so I could start coaching football every day in the fall. It was kind of insane, but when you're 21 years old, you kind of have an itch. You want to do something, you start doing it, and I never really thought I'd be there 18 years later, but I was an assistant coach for 16 years. Under some really great head coaches. And last year was my first year taking over as the head coach. So I'm about to enter my 18th season with the school and my second year as the head coach. We've been really blessed. Like, we're really lucky. We've had some really good players and really good kids over the last 10 or 12 years. It wasn't always the easiest. We had some talent early on, and, we had a lot of young guys on staff, didn't really know how to put a lot of stuff together. And we kind of figured some stuff out, grew up a lot of us together, and I was fortunate to coach with Coach Ron Bellamy, who's now at the University of Michigan, wide receivers coach. But he was our head coach when we were both young, and he did such a good job of building our program into really one of the stronger programs in the state of Michigan. Put a lot of guys out in school, and the draft was here, the NFL draft a couple weeks ago in Detroit, and it was really cool. And I don't know how public this type of advertising went out, but they had a lot of stuff, at least around here, about how Detroit, Michigan has the most current NFL players out of any city in America. So we think we play really good football here. And just to be clear, that is the city of Detroit. So we're about 20 minutes northwest of it. That doesn't even count, schools like myself, which are technically in the suburbs. So that's just the city public schools themselves. It's really an impressive feat. Detroit Gas Tech, Detroit King have been playing really good football for a long time, and and others as well, East English and Mumford and Denby. There's a lot of good programs in the city of Detroit, and we're just outside of that, and we've had some really good runs at it too.
So right in the heart of Big Ten country, and Coach and I were just talking pre-record. I got my Rutgers Cup here, so I got to represent New Jersey. So you now. Just explain to our listeners, Coach. I'm a Jersey guy, born and raised myself. But classification-wise, are you guys considered a big school, a small school? In New Jersey, Class 5 or is going to be our biggest school, or Group 5, I should say. Group 1 are our smaller schools. Where do you guys fall in the state of Michigan?
Yeah, it seems to be different in every state. I don't know why we all have different ways to say the same thing. It's like, if I go to Speedway, I get a large coffee. If I go to Starbucks, I might call it a venti or, a grande or whatever you want to call it. But we're in the biggest classification in Michigan, which is Division I here, is what they call it. We're right pretty solid in the middle of Division I in terms of like school population. So we just have just under 2,000 students in our school. The biggest schools in the state will have about 3,000. And Division I kind of cuts off about 1,500.
Okay, yeah, that's that. Numbers wise, we're about the same in New Jersey as you guys are out there in
Hmm.
Michigan. We just reversed the numbers, so we're five is our biggest,
Yeah,
one's our
yeah.
smallest. So, Coach, going into your 18th year now, coaching, starting at a young age, that's awesome. You've had to now have seen some different challenges going on, just diving into the whole officiating thing and stuff like that.
Hmm.
What what challenges have you seen with just like managing games efficiently and stuff like that from possibly an official's point of view? Because things are different state to state. We all kind of basically go by the NFHS rules, but how
Correct.
they're enforced does tend to change from state to state.
Yeah. We're pretty lucky. Like I would say, like over 90% of our guys are really good guys. Officials are really good guys. They're competent. They know the rules. But that probably has a lot to do with us being in a large classification, being in at least according to all the metrics that the smart computer people put out. We've been in the strongest league in the state of Michigan, like the last 4 or 5 years. So I do think that we very often get, I guess, the not the short end of the stick, the long stick, whatever the expression might be.
Understandable.
But
Yep.
yeah, we're fortunate because when I go to our league meetings and our county meetings, and I hear some of the stories from some of the guys in the smaller schools and the smaller divisions, it's not always the case. And I think a lot of the issues is that our officials, our population is just getting a little bit older, and they don't have the same recycling of new talent come in. Um, so it just gets difficult. You just get more guys that they're not bad. It's just they're inexperienced, and I don't think it's fair to put a 22 to 25-year-old kid in a varsity football game that's just learning, the mechanics and really the speed of the game. It's just not there yet. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
We're in a spot where we have to do that to um, get all the games covered, but it's really not fair to anybody. I don't exactly have a better solution either.
No, yeah, and I agree with you from being on both sides of it. Excuse me. And we've talked about this on some of my previous episodes. Since COVID, the numbers of officials has unfortunately decreased. The age has increased, so you're seeing that correlation. And we're having in New Jersey, in our area specifically, we're actually having problems filling games that our athletic directors have asked coaches to move games from Friday nights to possibly Saturday
Hmm.
nights or even Thursday nights. We're typically a six-man crew on the field in New Jersey. There are a couple of five-man games, and then when we get into our playoff games, the later rounds of our playoffs, we go to a seven-man crew. What numbers? What type of crews do you guys have out in Michigan?
We're pretty consistently 5-man crew in the regular season. We get to the
Okay.
playoffs, it does switch to 7-man crew. So I don't know how many rounds of your playoffs there are. We have to qualify for the playoffs, and at the most, you play 5 games. Last year we played 4. We were 1 away.
Oh,
So it's it's 7-man crews for those five games if you're able to get through all 5.
okay. So for us, we are going. We just New Jersey just recently added another game so that we have an overall group champion, as we were talking about our group classifications. Um,
Hmm.
so I want to say it's now up to 4 playoff games, but it's now only the final 2 games will we go with a seven-man crew, and we'll stick with our six-man crew throughout the season and throughout the earlier rounds of the playoffs. So it's still six-man, which does have its benefits. I do like having the six-man, but then I had the chance this past year to work one of our state championship games. Actually, give them another plug up at Rutgers. uh, we got to work the state playoff game up at Rutgers, championship game up at Rutgers, and we had a seven-man crew, and it was the first time that I've experienced a seven-man crew in my
Hmm.
position. And you were mentioning it before, the having young guys out there, 22, 23. I mean, the inexperience working big games like you're talking about, your big classifications of schools and the harder games. There's got to be some great rivalries and stuff going on like that. So it's tough putting a newer person in that situation. Um, Last year, not this past season, but the previous season, here in New Jersey, we had first year officials working some varsity games. That's where our numbers had gotten.
Okay.
So it's a problem across the country. I'm coming to find out. Um,
Hmm.
so you're saying it hasn't really impacted you that much, but you're definitely seeing it in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, and I guess we're lucky in that standpoint. We have 8 different divisions of 11-man football. So Division 1 through 8, where eight's the small schools, and we have another 2 divisions of 8-man football. And I guess I don't know how big the crews are for their games because it's kind of a different sport. But that's I guess a lot more of our rural parts of the state play 8-man
Hmm.
football. So if you kind of put it all together, it's 10 different classifications, and I know it gets thin for some of them. So I coached girls basketball for 10 years too, when I was an assistant coach, and a lot of those guys that officiated my girls basketball games are also my football officials. So
Yes.
in a way, it's helpful to me because they know who I am. I wasn't just some random assistant coach to them because I've had a relationship with them. But at the same time, I mean, if we're getting stretched thin in football, like it's not just us. It's probably, the basketball, it's probably softball and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I give a lot of credit to those guys that work basketball, because basketball is probably the one sport I do not want to officiate in, because those crowds are right on top of you. The coaches
They're on
are
top
right
of
on
you.
top of you. And there's no hiding in those situations. Me personally,
Yeah.
I'm an umpire. I'm in the middle of the field. I'm right with the defense. I
Yeah.
like to hide. I like to kind of disappear.
Yeah. Well, you're in the thick of it, though.
Yeah, but if I could pull a Homer Simpson and back myself into the hedge like Homer does, I'm a happy person. I just like to kind of blend in. But being 6'3", 260, I kind of don't really blend in too often. But so you actually kind of led into my next question for you about building those relationships with officials. How do you go about pregame, different things like that? How do you go about trying to build those relationships with the officials?
It's funny, like, it might sound like I've done this for a really long time, and I have with the kids and the parents and all that stuff, but for probably 12 of the 16 years that I was an assistant coach, I coached the quarterbacks, and game day I was in the booth. So like I loved being in the booth as a coach. You can see everything. You're removed from the emotion on the sideline and the field, so you kind of think a little bit calmer and clearer and all that stuff. But one thing I realized this year I never really did was had any communication with the officials ever at all. You know what I mean? So the only ones who really knew who I was were those guys that I had when I coached basketball 4 or 5 years ago. So a lot of it's just building relationships at that point. So I don't know. I just try to be down to earth guy, and they come over, introduce themselves. I know there's like a little script of the questions they got to ask, but I just try to ask them about anything else before that. You know what I mean? Just
Absolutely
try to get on that same page. Like we're all here for the same thing. Like we want this to go smoothly. We want everyone to be, healthy when we get out of here, and we just want it well run.
Yeah, and I keep on saying it. Our head official says that we're here to kind of spot the ball and wind the clock. We want to just keep everything running smoothly and keep everything going, and throw as little amount of flags as possible, but get the safety ones, get the point of the attack ones, and keep the game flowing. We want the kids to have an enjoyable time. So you talked about that pregame. What are some of the things that you tend to go over with the pregame with the officials before games?
Well, being like growing up as an offensive guy, and this past year I was over the defensive side of the ball a whole lot more. But I always show them any formation that might look just any non-traditional formation. We don't do a ton of crazy stuff with like moving linemen and hiding guys in the line, but we do cover our receivers and try to get, numbers advantages, and we'll use our motions in a certain way. So even though I don't think it's too far out there, it's not too exotic, I just have like a little binder, like, hey, this is all you're going to see, and you can look through them all. You can look through one and kind of get the idea, but I just want them to so like, this is what they're coached to do. If they're wrong, yeah, we're wrong. But, I guess maybe it was 2016. We got flagged in the same game, maybe 5 times for illegal formations. I don't think any of them were. So I just made a point from that point forward to make sure that, you're going to see everything we got. We don't go too crazy on special teams, but if we do, like, you're going to see it.
So you're actually visually showing them what the formations look like, X's and O's wise?
Yeah. X's and O's wise. I'm gonna point out the receivers. Those are the 2 guys they're if they're covering each other up, that's the guy that's gonna cover him up. And he's taught to look at you and put his fist forward, because it's showing that I'm intentionally covering my teammate up. And
So,
it's helped. I guess we haven't had anything go against us since then, so worth it.
so that you just brought up a great point, and I previously, before I was an umpire, I was a short wing guy. So I was the guy that the receivers were punching. And I always tell them pregame, hey, give me an arm up. Give me a point up to the line of scrimmage if you're on. Give me a point back if you're off.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, you have no idea how many times we would come over. Am I good? Am I good? I'm like, I don't know if you're any good or not.
Yeah.
Like, you tell me. Because we're kind of trained, hey, declare yourself on or off, especially now. I doing some research on you guys. I noticed you guys have a nice turf field, so it tends to be a lot easier formationally in that aspect. Not every team has that. And sometimes the lines are a little bit wonky. So we're kind of taught, hey, if the kid comes up and they declare and say, Mr. Official, I'm on, we're going to honor that because we want them to be on, even if they might be a little bit deeper and back a little bit further, because I don't want to move them up pre-snap, because all of a sudden, if they take a step going forward pre-snap, now you got a legal motion. The other side's going nuts. He was moving before the snap. So keep doing that with your kids, Coach. Keep on having them communicate with the officials and say, I'm on, I'm off, and just pointing, because especially you get some loud games. So that's a great technique that you're teaching the kids.
Yeah, thanks. And you know what? We actually have had exactly what you described there. Maybe 11 years ago, we didn't have the best group of linemen, so we were going ultra tempo. Like, we were trying to snap this ball. 'Cause we had some pretty good skill guys. Our quarterback's actually in the Minnesota Vikings right now. He's a wide receiver, so like, he was a stud. But we went as fast as we could. And part of that happened several times where, like, the official says, hey, you got to move up, you got to move back, but we're snapping the ball while that guy's moving, and then he has to throw the flag.
Yeah.
And that's really, it was on the quarterback. Like, I know it looks like your guys are set, but we're going to go as fast as we can, but make sure your guys are set.
So now, with that being said, now how do you work it with your players, say your linemen too, just communicating with the officials on the field, your receivers? They don't get that interference call that all receivers, anytime it's incomplete, it's always interference. How do you go about that as a coach with talking to your kids about stuff like that?
Man, I tell them never say a word, because it's I've got some divas out there right now playing receiver too, like your prototypical. They're the best, man. They're awesome kids. They really are. They eat lunch with me during the school day, but oh man, if you see them out there with the lights on, like, yeah. So you got to rein them in a little bit. So just don't ever say a word. Like, you can complain, like, in the heat of the moment, like vent frustration, maybe throw your arms up, but then just walk away. Like, let it be gone. Don't let it get into you, because that whole next play mentality, like, for it, in that instance, it's true too. And that way, really, I just want to be able to handle that all myself. Now last year I had a 4-year like quarterback who was starting some games as a freshman, and then all the games sophomore, junior, senior. So honestly, like, he honestly had a lot of relationship with a lot of those officials too, and they knew him because he had a big personality and just a great leader. So I let him talk, because I knew he was just ask questions and actually just communicate a little bit. But pretty rare that I ever let the kids talk to the officials at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, now
I don't know.
I'm the opposite.
Maybe that's like stripping them away from like some great like learning opportunities and leadership opportunities and things like that. But I don't know. They're kids. I know
listen,
yeah.
The kids are learning to respect the game in general, not just the officials, but respecting the game in general, that things are going to go their way sometimes and things aren't going to go their way at times. Me being in the middle of the field sometimes, I'm always talking with I got the O-line, the D-line, the linebackers with me. I'm in the thick of it, like we were saying before. So I'm always talking to those guys, but hey, guys, keep your hands in, guys. And then getting the complaints from the defensive side. Oh, coach, I'm being held. I'm like, listen, I love when they come up and say, Mr. Official, can you watch 76? He's been holding me all night. Absolutely, I'll watch it. And I'm definitely gonna hold my focus on that spot a little bit longer for them and see what's going on. But we're trained to kind of bring in the whole area. And it's amazing how many times that the kids will complain to us, but then in turn, they're going both ways. And then the other defense is complaining to us that this guy is held in them. And I'm like, how many flags have I thrown on you tonight? And well, none. I'm like, okay, so play football then. So same thing goes with the interference size. A lot of those kids are playing DB and wide receiver. How many interference calls do we have on you tonight?
Yeah. So, yeah. That's a great point.
And it's good fun football for the kids too, and I like being in there and talking football with the kids too, especially at the younger levels. Now, how many levels in your school do you guys have? You got a JV, a freshman level, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we have a freshman at JV level. About 70% of our league still does. Some of the programs are having a tough time fielding a freshman team every year. They're just going JV and varsity, but we've had all three levels for a while, and we hope that that stays the same.
Do you have a chance to spy in on those games at all? I know it's tough being the head coach of watching everything going on, because I'm sure you guys are still practicing varsity practice for film and during those things. Do you get a chance to see any of those games?
Yeah, I used to be able to see a lot more. So I had a son that was born this summer. So the freshman JV games, I ran home, like did the dad thing and watched it on TV because we got like those little cameras, you can watch them now. But every other year, yeah, I was always there on the sideline. I try to keep my distance, like to let them do their thing, the kids and our coaches. But
Yep.
just to be there and be present and really support the kids and get to know them.
So with that being said, give me some of your experiences on the officiating end when you're getting the lower level games.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of the guys are the same that'll just work on for us like a Thursday night and then a Friday night too. That just, I don't know, they're just grinders like that. But then, there's a little bit more inexperience at those levels, and I got some younger coaches that don't always handle, that inexperience. But they're both inexperienced, I guess, the coach and
Correct.
the official. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be more mistakes, but there's more mistakes by the players as well. It's kind of goes all the way around.
Yep, and that's kind of you answered my question. Kind of gave you a little lead pass on that one, because
Yeah.
that I still work freshman games. I still work JV games when my
Hmm.
schedule is open. So predominantly the majority of our chapter of officials do work the lower level games too, on top of the Fridays and Saturdays. But the Friday Saturday games take precedence over the younger games. But I use it as a teaching moment. I don't even want to bring a flag out with me for a freshman game. I want to talk to the
Yeah.
kids because it's still a learning level. Like
Yeah.
I will go into the offensive huddle and say, listen, 58, you were holding the last three plays on Friday nights. That flag's coming out and you're getting ripped by your coach. I said, so either you correct it now or you're going to start seeing some laundry on the ground. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, and that's a mentality that I have. But then I also do the same
Yeah.
thing with some younger officials too. I'll go up and we do have a mentorship program here in New Jersey where we will work with our younger officials, and you are going to see the younger officials getting on the field, because the only way that they're getting better, just like the players, is by getting the reps and seeing the different things.
Oh,
So the
for
lower
sure.
levels definitely help out immensely with that. But hopefully you're not getting thrown in with three or four brand new guys. Hopefully there's at least one seasoned veteran with the crew working those younger games
Oh
for you.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. There always is.
Oh,
There
that's
always
good.
is.
That's good. So, Coach, with that, we're going to take a short pause. We're going to take a little beer run here, so we can go refill if we need to refill. And when we come back, we are going to jump right into our little coaches quiz, our flagged facts quiz game for Coach Hilbers here. So, ladies and gentlemen, come on back. We will be right back in a moment.
If you're enjoying today's show and you want to show your appreciation to Mike D, you can buy him a beer by clicking on the link in the show notes or go to buymeacoffee.com/Mike D the referee. And as always, make sure to click follow and give 5 stars. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here with Coach Hilbers from West Bloomfield High out in the Detroit, Michigan area. Coach, are you ready for your flagged facts? Are you ready for our Whistle Talk rule quiz?
I'm ready for it. Let's do it.
All right. So, question number one. Here we go. 4th and 5 from the B20. A43 takes a handoff, gains 2 yards, fumbles, and A76 recovers the ball at the B14 and it advances it to the B12. Now, Coach and I were talking pre-production here about the A's and the B's. So for our new listeners out there, A is offense, B is defense. It's just the officials' language that we speak to each other. So again, 4th and 5, gains 2 yards but fumbles. Offensive lineman now picks it up, a little scoop, and advances it now to the 12-yard line. So the lineman gained 8 yards total. So, Coach, what do we got here? We got a penalty. We got a first down. We got a change of possession. What do you think?
That should be a first down. I think it's the NFL where you can't advance or you can't fumble forward or advance a fumble. I forget the exact wording. The NFL guys do it. But that should be a first down.
Absolutely. So in the high school rules, it would be 1st and 10 from the 12-yard line. A is allowed to advance a fumble. And an interesting one I had a couple seasons ago, running back fumbled the ball on the 3-yard line. Ball rolled into the end zone where an offensive lineman dove on it. And offensive lineman got credited with a touchdown. So they can advance it, they can recover it, and it would be a touchdown, or in this scenario, it would be first down for the offense. So
that's
Coach,
a big man's dream right there. Big man's dream.
I always try talking my college coach into doing a little tackle throwback, but he wasn't having it. All right, question number 2. We're going into a little bit of the kicking game. So now, Coach, just to forewarn you, the kicking game is where you will see anything and everything happen. This is where the officials really kind of take their time with things, because if something crazy is going to happen in the game, it's typically in the special teams segment of the game. So we got K's 4th and 10 from the K 40-yard line. K now being kicking team. K 18's punt. So the punter shanks the punt, where the ball hits the ground at the K 45. So the ball went 5 yards forward, where it bounces back untouched to the K 35-yard line. K 18, who happens to be the punter again, grabs the ball and advances it to the R 20. Coach, what do we got in this scenario?
I think the untouched word is the big one. If it's untouched, it looks like it goes back behind the line of scrimmage. You should be able to advance it. So I think the kicking team has a first down.
That is absolutely correct. Right. So it would be 1st and 10 at the R 20-yard line. And Coach, you broke that down perfectly. Ball went across the line of scrimmage. Wasn't touched by any team. Came back to the kicking side of the line of scrimmage. And in this scenario, the punter was the one who was able to grab the ball, and they advanced it, and they got a first down. So absolutely good shot on that one, Coach. And that one I can tell you.
If the returning team touched it, you could recover it at the spot, but you can't advance it. Is that right?
That is correct. So if the returning team touched it, it would be a muff at that point in time. So
yeah. Okay.
All right. Question number 3. So this one's a little bit of a different style question for you, Coach. So after an incomplete pass, A61 grabs and then yanks B53's face mask, which results in the helmet coming off. Now, I'm saying this one's a little bit different, Coach, because we're talking about now equipment issues going on. And when a helmet comes off in a game, players got to be removed for a game. Not for a game, for a play, I'm sorry. So in this scenario, you got an incomplete pass, but A61 grabs and yanks B53's face mask, and the result of that is the helmet coming off. Coach, what do you think you have there? Do you have a penalty, first of all, and do you think that 53 would have to come out of the game?
We've had these ones, so you're going to have should be a dead ball personal foul for the yanking of the helmet, and 53 does not have to come out because it's the penalty is what resulted in the helmet coming off.
Coach, you are spot on tonight. A61 will be flagged for a 15-yard dead ball penalty, so that's going to go from the previous spot, 15 yards up. But B53, the defender, does not need to come out of the game for the equipment reason because of the fact that this happened because of a penalty. Now, if it just happened that the kid's helmet popped off, we saw a lot of it. It's gotten better in the last couple of years, especially with the Speed Flex helmets with the kids zipping up the sides.
Yeah.
But a couple of years back with all the do-rags and different things like that some of the kids were wearing, it was actually made their heads more slick, that the helmets were popping off a little bit more. But, Coach, you nailed all 3 of them. Good job.
Thanks. Yeah, we've had that one happen almost down to a T. We've had a kid receive the foul.
Oh, okay. That's good that you weren't on the fouling side.
Yeah.
So, Coach, when we had our little pause, you and I were chatting, and you brought up something about Michigan, like New Jersey, does not have spring football. We're kind of in the same boat. We don't have spring football, and I know that is actually something that's been talked about a lot on the national level. Um, how is it that you guys are able to work on stuff like that? Just talking a little football wise, what do you guys do in the off season?
Yeah, so Michigan, like you said, we don't have spring football. I don't see it changing for us anytime soon. Just the way our association is, they're really big on multiple sports, and they don't want to take away from lacrosse, track, baseball, whatever else is going on. Um, but we're pretty fortunate in our school. We have a class during the school day. It's called like a sports specific conditioning, which is really like a football tech class in this semester of the school year. So when we're in the off season, I get about 40 of my players in the class, and that starts for us mid-January, which in Michigan it's pretty cold. So January and February and about half of March, we're really just in the weight room and in the aux gym, just lifting, doing some plyos, doing some agilities, just getting stronger, getting to move a little bit. But when the weather turns, we can, lift for 20 or 30 minutes and head out to the field and kind of do some drills. And it gives you a chance just to do something. Keep from getting rusty a little bit. And
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
good
sorry, it's
stuff.
not the whole team, but it's 40 guys you can get out there in the class, and it's something.
Oh, absolutely, and that's an interesting thing. And I know we're an officiating show. We're not really talking about officiating in this quick
Yeah.
segment here, but that's just an interesting take on how Michigan runs it. Here in New Jersey, I mentioned we have what's called option two for some schools. It's actually not even a statewide type of scenario, but the kids can opt out of being in phys ed, so it's in lieu of phys ed. They're basically into a study hall class, but in the class in my school district, they're in a classroom and they're supposed to be studying, i.e., staring at their cell phones. Uh, a whole nother issue. All right, so getting a little bit back on track here, Coach. What kind of rule changes have you guys seen? Something that you kind of feel was needed? Anything in the past couple of years that you're like, finally, okay, we got that rule in place?
Well, one thing that I did when I became the head coach is I stepped away from, got out of the booth and coaching the quarterbacks and being with the offense and game planning and all that stuff. And I started coaching special teams because I wanted my offensive coordinator to do the offense, my D coordinator to do the defense. And I wanted to be connected to the whole team. I thought special teams was a really good way to do that. You get players from, both sides of the balls that can do that. And, I also want to, I guess, make the special teams decisions for the teams about whether we're kicking, going for it. If we're ever going to fake anything, it's my call. But I guess with that, to answer your question, is it feels like, and it looks like it's going to happen again eventually to the high school level, that, things like the kickoff changes quite a bit, and it's usually for the good, whether it's, switching to the 5x5 or 6x4 and the run up zone and things like that. And who knows how long it'll be before we go to the NFL model, like the new one. If it works for them, I assume there'll be a trickle down effect, but I don't know. But that was one thing that was, I feel like I always got to stay like versed on, or like the ways that those special teams rules can change.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one that you mentioned was probably needed and good for the game, is different subject, unrelated, is the blocking behind a runner or a returner.
Okay.
Whether it's a blind side or just blocking it all when the ball carrier passes you back against where the play is going. And I forget when exactly it was, but I can tell you it was like 2015 or 16. They made that an emphasis in Michigan. It might have been when the rule changed, because we were in the state finals in 2017, down by one, receiving a punt with about a minute and 5 seconds left. And the kid returned it to the opposite 15 and it got called back, which was the correct call, but it was the correct call. Our kid, it wasn't in the back. It wasn't really dirty, but it was behind the runner. It was a good 2-3 yards behind the runner.
Yep.
Probably unnecessary. They threw the flag, and we went from the opposite 15 all the way back to our 30-yard line, didn't score, and we lost. And I remember thinking, like, if this was 2 years ago, we won a state title, because this is like a new emphasis and a new rule. And, now that it's 8-9 years later, it's just commonplace in football. And it was, it was needed, to make the game safer, make it sustainable for kids going forward. But things like that are I still have kids that think like those blindside blocks shouldn't be fouls, and you have to coach it out of them. Like, no, like, I don't care who you are. Like, you can think it's soft. Like, you can think that that's not real football, but it's going to get called every single time. So
Yeah.
at that point, if you know that information, if you're doing it, it's selfish. So we got to not be selfish, and we got to play smart.
So when that rule came into place, you're right, it was about 8 years ago now. That rule came in was when I was first getting involved in officiating, transitioning from the
Mm-hmm.
coaching side. And I had a hard time with it. I'm like, kind of like what you're saying with the kids. But
Yeah.
now, hindsight, looking back on it, I think it's one of the best rules that we have implemented in the last couple of years. You mentioned the scenario. It was on a punt return, and we were talking about in the quiz game that's where you're going to see the craziest stuff happening because you got the ball going in all different directions, sideline to
Yeah.
sideline, north and south. So you tend to see it on the broken plays or on the big returns and stuff like that. And yeah, it's a big point of emphasis because it's safety. And with the concussion
Mm-hmm.
stuff going on these days, it's definitely that's something that is needed. Any other type of fouls or things that you may want to see changed or that you're looking to possibly, I don't know, something that you think could help the game out?
I mean, not to get into it too much, like I'm sure half the people do with football now. It's just the consistency with the linemen down the field in the pass plays. Like we'll run a few RPOs ourselves, and like our philosophy offensively is basically force them to throw a flag. If they do, all right, we'll be a little bit more cautious. Maybe we don't call those plays. You know what I mean? So like we're
Yep.
guilty of it, but we also have seen people get away with it long enough where it's like, well, if we don't do this too, like we're stupid. But then you get crews that are really good at it. They're on it. You telecom them in the pregame, like, hey, this team, they run power a ton, and then they're going to pass off of it. This guard, like I've seen him 8 yards downfield,
Yeah.
and they'll throw the flag. So we got guys that are really good at it. So I know it's being addressed. I know it's incredibly difficult to do your regular mechanics and then look at the offensive line's placement when the ball's thrown. I know it's hard, but it just maybe it's a better way to police that and manage it.
So here's going to be my plug to the Michigan Officiating Association.
All right.
6-man crew has helped us out immensely with that call because now our two short wing officials are holding the line of scrimmage. And I can
Yeah.
tell you, Coach, that short wing position is probably the most difficult position to officiate. The white hat has the spotlight on them. The umpire is in the middle and getting run over by the guys. But the keys that our short wings have of looking, where's the ball? We got momentum, lineman downfield. It's a difficult call. And now with the 5-man mechanic, one of those guys is taking off going downfield on a pass, kind of floating. So they're not really even looking for that because they're trying to help the deep official out with interference calls. So now you have your umpire that's walking forward probably. And again, I don't know how Michigan, because mechanics are done a little bit different from state to state. But in New Jersey, our 5-man mechanic, I read pass, I'm walking up to the offensive line to try to see if the quarterback crosses the line of scrimmage. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's a very gray area too. Was the lineman down there before the quarterback released it? Was the lineman just quick? The ball was released and then they got down there. So it is a very difficult one. And yeah, you definitely want to have a crew that's consistent with it. So
Yeah.
I could tell you honestly though, it's probably one of the hardest calls for us to make on a true consistent basis because there's times where we say to each other, "Oh crap, I think I just missed the lineman downfield," and we have headsets on. So I'll have a wing guy say, "Hey Mike, do me a favor, just tell 78 he was close to being downfield on that one," and I'll walk over to the offense and say, "Make sure you're holding your water there, kid." So
Yeah.
it's stuff that we try to do a little bit more preventative officiating.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that it's hard. I mean, the whole concept of the play is that, you're confusing the reads of the defense. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's meant to deceive. I grew up running the triple options. This is a long time ago, but, like 20 years ago, I remember a time where just double wing flex bone, like you're watching Paul Johnson at Navy.
Great
quarterback
plug.
faked it. Like it was a really, really good fake. He's standing in the end zone holding the football, and the play was getting blown dead back there. So
Yep.
I know it, but it's meant to deceive. So at some point, it's if you're too good, it's a problem.
Coach, I ran that offense for 3 years myself. I used to go down to Navy and clinic with them. So I'm one of the few still fans of it. I love it, but
it's awesome.
It's difficult.
We got to play against it once a year. Like we play against like a spread flex bone type team that kind of does this hybrid stuff, and it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, Coach, transitioning a little bit from the officiating, 18 years, a couple state championships under your belt. Am I correct in saying that?
We've won one. We were runners up the others.
Okay, so you've had
Yeah.
some big victories, some big moments. Do you have one that really stands out, though? Do you have a memorable game that really stands out for you in a positive light? Something that you're like, wow, that's something that's going to stay with me forever.
Yeah, I guess if you think back, there's definitely a few. When we got over the hump and won the state title in 2020, it was such a mess because it was the COVID year. Our season was canceled by this state association at least twice. Honestly, it might have been 3 times. So we're out there in practice, with all these crazy rules in August, trying to make it work. And we're at our lunch break of our 2-a-days, lifting on the track because we can't go to the weight room.
Yep.
Like, can't be indoors, wearing masks, do all the nonsense everybody went through. I don't mean that negatively, nonsense, but just all the chaos that we all had to go through. And our kids look at his phone. He says they just canceled our season. It's like, oh my gosh. And we just like, what are we gonna do? And a couple weeks later, that was right when the Big Ten canceled their season, if you remember. Yep. Other states figured out that they could kind of play. The Big Ten kind of figured out that they could make it work. And then the Michigan High School Association said, all right, like we missed the first 3 games of the year. We're going to pick it up. And they did, kind of adjusted the schedule. We were all happy and went rolling through the playoffs and hit another COVID pause. We were just through the regional round of the playoffs and they canceled the season again. And that time, it felt like there's a little bit of finality to it. Like, wow, this is the second time it's been canceled. It's mid-November. Things aren't really looking good. We weren't supposed to do, but my wife and I hopped in the car, drove to Philadelphia to see our goddaughter, like babysit for them so they could, while they were working at home and stuff like that. So I was in Philadelphia when we got a call saying, hey, we're back on. We got practice tomorrow. And I was like, all right, I got to go home.
Road trip. We're
back on just like that. We had practice and they gave us about 2 or 3 weeks to kind of get like reacclimated and ramp everything back up. And it was just nuts. We didn't finish the season until January. It was mid to late January. We were out playing in Michigan outdoors trying to make this happen. And in the semifinals, we had played the team that had knocked us out the previous 2 years, and by 3 points and then by 4 points. They were both battles, and we beat them in overtime. And just that whole process, I guess, of you talk about sports and handling adversity, and the ebbs and flows of going up and down. And gosh, we dealt with it all. And to be able to have a year like that where you finish on top at the end, like that, yeah, I'll never forget that.
Coach, my next question was going to be about handling adversity, but there is nothing more in your face than what you just talked about. That's life right there. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I love this sport so much, is because we're not just teaching football, we're teaching life. That's the ebbs and flows of the everyday life and what everyone was dealing with. And the fact that some kids did have the opportunity to still go out there and play. We kind of did the same thing here in Jersey. We still did have a season. It was shortened. And the respect on the field by the kids, the coaches, the officials, just everybody just saying, hey, we're here. We're doing this. Like, we're playing football. Let's do this and have some fun with it and remember why we're here. So it definitely, it is a positive memory and a very tough, dark state of mind, tough state of a time frame. So that's right. Really good stuff.
We were all just so happy to be there at that point. It was kind of crazy. And to your point, like, honestly, like I said, like that second pause or that cancellation of our season, I'll be honest, I kind of lost hope, but our kids never did. Like, they never did. They kept doing what they could do. Like dealing with the unfortunate situation they were placed in. So our running back at the time was Donovan Edwards, who's the running back at the University of Michigan now. He had a pretty big game against Ohio State and Alabama, and then again the national championship game for University of Michigan. He was supposed to go to college. He was supposed to graduate early and go to college. He petitioned the NCAA if our season was high school season was extended, he could stay in high school and finish the season in January. So to have a kid like that like never lost hope, never lost focus, and went way out of his way to just in case we were able to play. It kept everybody else in line too. Like when you got this kid that's a leader like that, yeah, it was pretty cool.
And in the long run, people that were associated with that are going to be better off for learning how to deal with it and seeing and going by his model of what he did. Hopefully, then they continue to just get better in life and on and off the gridiron, on and off the field. That's really good stuff, Coach. So, Coach, getting close to the end. Why don't you give our listeners a little shout out of your team, your players, your guys out there? They're busting their butts.
Yeah, I said at the beginning, like, I'm so lucky, I'm so blessed. We got some really good kids and a lot of really good players through the years. I've mentioned a few of them in the last 45 minutes or so. But yeah, the kids I got now, they're great, man. Like some of them will come in and have lunch with me during the school day, sit in my office, and some of them I've had in class that we talked about. I've had them for 3.5 years, going on 4 years. And I think I got the best job in the world, just because it's so fun every day, so rewarding, and yeah, it's exhausting, and yeah, it's frustrating, and yeah, there's all these other craziness that we have to deal with. But at the end of the day, it's always worth it, because whether it's you see a kid living their dreams playing college football, or you see a kid that we had a kid 2 years ago that was just happy as could be to try to go join the Marines and went down to Parris Island, South Carolina, and now he's just doing it, man. Like he's just doing it. He'll call me when he's back in town and tell me all this crazy stuff that he does, but he just loves it. So we know no matter where they end up, when they come back through our doors and see us this time of year, especially, I get so many texts from kids that are finishing up college. Hey, I'm back in town. Can I come work out with the kids in the field? Can I come use the weight room? And it's always yes. It's always yes. And I'll figure out a way to make it work with administration and security and everybody else. But like, yes, come back. And it's just because it's the best part of the gig.
No, there's nothing better that I still have kids that I coached 20 some odd years ago that still call me coach. Hey, coach, what's going on, coach?
Yeah.
I got a former player now lives in my neighborhood and he has 5 children of his own. I'm showing my age here. He's got 5 kids of his own. And every time I see him just walking around the neighborhood, hey, coach, what's going on, coach? And still, I'm like, hey, Bill, you can call me Mike.
But it's not going to happen though.
No, it's not. And I still do the same thing to my former coaches. So it's just it's one of those things. But yeah, that's great stuff. Yeah. That really is.
And one of the things I was able to do when I was head coach, I got 5 guys on staff that played for me at some point or another that are alum. And yeah, like I don't know, it's coming up on year 18 for me at West Bloomfield, and I honestly don't believe it until I start like counting on my fingers and go and find the T-shirt from the first year I coached. It doesn't feel like it. It really doesn't.
No.
But I guess that's how many years it's been. So yeah.
Well, Coach, I truly thank you for taking your time, busy schedule, newborn child, taking your time out of your day to come on to our show here. I want to wish you guys in West Bloomfield the best success coming forward. If there's anything that I can do, if you have any questions during the season, you got my number. Feel free to reach out. I'll definitely be keeping tabs on what's going on out there in the Detroit, Michigan area and keep an eye on you guys. But again, thank you once again for coming on our show.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun, and I appreciate that. We'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Whistle Talk, where we unravel the fascinating world of football officiating. If you enjoyed today's discussion and want to stay in the loop with the latest insights, be sure to subscribe to Whistle Talk on your favorite podcast platform. Stay connected with us by following Whistle Talk on social media, where we share behind-the-scenes glimpses, updates, and engage with our incredible community of officiating enthusiasts. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Just search for the words Whistle Talk. Your support means the world to the show, and we'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or suggestions for future episodes. Drop us a line through our website or message me on social media. I'm always eager to connect with the fellow fans and continue the conversation. Until next time,
Keep blowing the whistle on the untold stories and nuances of football officiating. Thanks for being part of the Whistle Talk family. This is Mike D, the referee, saying so long for now.